we welcome you back to News Beyond Headlines, and today we have our guest who is a political scientist, and this is Barrack Muluka. Karibu sana Mudosi.
Asante.
So let's just go direct to the point, Barrack.
Yes.
We want to talk about particularly the status of the country in matters politics. Kenya is heading to 2027 general election. We had PCS Musalia Mudavadi saying that there is a possible referendum. When you're talking about politics and constitutional warnings amid economic pressures, what are we staring at? Are we staring at a crisis as we head to elections?
I think if we want to get it completely right in one phrase, we would talk about confused leadership. The country has suffered the tragedy of confused leadership over the past few years, and which actually stretches back to the regime before the present one, the Jubilee regime, and now the Kenya Kwanza dispensation. Confused leadership that does not recognize why it is there. Leadership that seeks to be self-serving, because the Constitution of Kenya is very clear about delineation, electoral boundaries, subsequent to reviews of the population distribution in the constituencies or electoral areas that exist for the time being, that it will be done every 10 years, and that at the very max 12 years it ought to be done, and that the review, if within 2 years of elections, it shall not apply to that particular election. We have wasted time. This is something that we should have done in 2019. We have come all the way up to where we are today, and it has become a crisis because of political bickering, because of poor political leadership, and its leadership which has been serving itself. Why we didn't do this was that in the period between 2017 and 2022, we had gaps within the IEBC. For a long time, the commission was not properly constituted. Then after the 2022 elections, again, we have had a crisis, and it's all been because of selfishness on the part of the people in power and their opponents outside power, being individuals who are not capable of thinking about the composition of IEBC outside the framework of their own narrow interests. That who will I have as a commissioner who can deliver the results that I want, be it in a referendum, be it in an election, in a ward, in parliament, or wherever. And so from President Uhuru Kenyatta now to President William Ruto to Raila Odinga when he was there, because we must say the truth in spite of the fact that he's no longer there, and that our people tend to believe that the sins that people committed when they were around should not be spoken about. All these people are responsible for the crisis in which the country finds itself today. We're going to elections in 2027. Very soon we will be saying if we are going to elections next year, with the electoral areas the way they are defined today, we are actually in a breach of the Constitution. And those elections themselves start being open to question in terms of their legality, in terms of their faithfulness to the Constitution. So we are migrating from 2025 to 2027, riding on the cusp of a crisis, a constitutional crisis. And even in the midst of that crisis, you are going to witness a stonewalling, that those who are in government are going to be looking at the whole scenario from the perspective of how it does or does not favor them. And those in the opposition will also be looking at it from the vantage of how does it augur for me personally. And it's a tragedy of monumental proportions that are such as the people we have in the cadres of leadership in Kenya today.
Who is to blame here? Is it the government itself, I mean the executive? Is it the judiciary or IEBC?
I think
or Parliament?
I have been very clear that it is the national executive and their adversaries in the political opposition. Why did we not have the IEBC properly constituted? IEBC should have been properly constituted if the elections in 2022 had been held in line with the Constitution, in faithfulness to the Constitution. But you had one side with its commissioners in the commission and another side with the commissioners in the commission. In the end, they left, some because their tenure ended, others because they were disgraced and they had to leave. And they didn't leave because, like the ones who are called the OPEC 4, they did not leave because they had finished their tenure. They left because of their partisan interests and partisan performance. Then even the ones who survived had their own leanings within the political space. And so you have the executive that is trying to drive all the institutions and entities in the country, and therefore derailing the constitution and constitutional processes, the executive squarely. And if you want us to name them, we can name them, the people who have been in charge of the executive space and those who have been the pillars in the opposition space. Their names are well known. They are the persons responsible for this crisis that we have in the country, because these are crises. We must recognize it for what it is. It's a constitutional crisis created by William Ruto, by Raila Odinga, by Uhuru Kenyatta. They are the people to bear the responsibility. And it's been because of selfishness.
Now we're talking about referendum. If at all 2027 elections are carried out, so what will happen?
The elections can be carried out within the usual framework of impunity, because we don't respect the law. If we were people who respect the law, Uhuru Kenyatta had the best opportunity to teach this country the importance of respecting the law. When Chief Justice David Maraga advised him to dissolve Parliament over the question of the 2/3 gender rule, if Uhuru Kenyatta had exercised the constitutional mandate bestowed upon the office of president to dissolve Parliament that year, people in this country would have learned the importance of fidelity to the law. But that does not obtain. We are most likely going to go to an election that is going to be done within the framework of impunity. We will go on anyway. Ruto says, let's go on. Koitio Mtata and others will go to court. And the courts could actually nullify the whole electoral process for being unconstitutional. And then, of course, you'll hear William Ruto talking about, oh, you're not taking into account the interests of the nation, that the laws do not operate in a vacuum. Where have they been to pay attention to the greater national interest and to patriotism when the ball was squarely within their docket, that they should have done that which they should have done? that they should have forgotten about their partisan, selfish, individual interests and allowed the IEBC to be constituted. Where were those who were delaying the process through the court system? Where were those in the executive who should have seen what those who were taking us through the courts were talking? We are like a choir without a proper choir master who can harmonize the sounds within that choir into a good melodious rhythm that we then call music. So there's noise here in the opposition, there's noise there in government, and within the two spaces, national interest suffers.
What are the political risks of holding a referendum?
The most significant risks are, in fact, legal risks rather than political risks. Legal risks that are we going to have a referendum that itself follows the law? We saw that in the past, President Uhuru and Raila Odinga, God rest his soul in eternal peace, attempted to drag the country through a constitutional referendum that elected flawed processes, and 3 times the courts threw them out. So what has been started by Musalia Mudavadi, or through Musalia Mudavadi, is itself an executive process that they hopefully will not repeat the mistake that was made during the BBI, that they can canalize it through Parliament under Article 256 of the Constitution, and let Kenyans decide. Politically, the risks would be that we are going to continue haggling and continue berating each other and making a lot of noise, and so we do not even get the process started. Already there were people in court. We are not so sure to what extent their presence in court is within the drivers of the energy of fidelity to the law, and to what extent it's about politics.
Actually, people already are asking right now, why Musalia Mudavadi? The fact that he's an executive, is he the right person to talk about having a referendum?
Musalia Mudavadi, in the extra legal office that he holds, has been given the mandate by President William Ruto to coordinate the affairs of government, first at ministerial level, but the executive orders that were issued by the president also indicate that he is responsible for coordination of parliamentary affairs within the executive, and therefore he is naturally the office to bail the cat, if I may be allowed to use that expression. The Prime Cabinet Secretary is correctly the individual to bail this cat. The question that arises is why they did not think about this earlier.
Sure.
When there was still time. They would have sorted out the matters at hand without the need for a referendum. But I think hidden within that whole referendum effort are other political interests, like the offices they want to create. It is interesting that in this country, once people are in power and they want to hang on to power, they start looking for the possibilities of creating extra offices that they are going to use as baits to ethnic kingpins or individuals who are perceived to be ethnic kingpins, in the hope, of course, that those ethnic kingpins then appeal to their tribes and tribal followings to vote in a given way, so that those kingpins then occupy those offices. Like this one, which they are saying should coincide with the 2027 election, then naturally creates offices, like Office of Prime Minister, Office of Deputy Prime Minister, the various deputy presidents. And therefore, as you are electing the people who are on the ballot papers, you are also saying yes to a constitutional referendum. And when the results of the constitutional referendum are announced and they coincide with the election of president, then the president now has got some extra offices that have been created during that election through the referendum that has gone on parallel with the election. And so with these extra offices, the president is now able to appoint some senior tribal fellows into those offices. And so the whole thing is a ruse. What they want to do is to say, because there's a referendum, there's going to be prime minister, we are announcing in advance that the prime minister will be Barrack Muluka of Emmanudia. And so all the Emmanudians are supposed now to vote for President William Ruto because their son Barrack is going to become prime minister. Never mind that the people don't see any value out of those offices. Musalia Mudavadi has been a de facto prime minister for 3 years. The fourth one is going. What have the Luhya people got out of that? Moses Wetangula has been Speaker of the National Assembly for 3 years. Fourth one going. What have the Bukusu people, let's leave alone the rest of the Luhya people, what have they got out of that? Amason Kingi has been Speaker of the Senate. Kilifi remains as poor as ever. The people of Kilifi are as hungry as they ever were. Perhaps they are even a little poorer. You have all these people in the cabinet. I came here, my brother Paranya here is a minister in the Ruto government. Never mind that he had vowed never to take up any such appointment. What have the people of Emabode here enjoyed out of that? The people of Emmanudia here, what are they getting out of it? So these ruses are basically serving the interests of the executive and especially of the person who is the national CEO, the president.
So the referendum issue coming up right now, it's just political.
Precisely.
Is Kenya currently being governed politically, constitutionally, or tactically for 2027, in your view?
All governance by the executive throughout the world and throughout history is political, because those who govern are politicians, and there are different, of course, models of political systems. Ours here purports to follow the path of liberal democracy. And in liberal democracy, the one most critical thing is the consent of the governed. And when we start talking about the consent of the governed, we find the intersection between politics and the law. And of course, you introduced a third dimension of tact, and you're saying tact towards a specific goal, the goal being the 2027 election. In both the present moment that this particular team governs, and in the future, the consent of the governed is critical as a legal component, and the consent of the governed expresses itself at the ballot box. That is where the people say we want to be governed according to the agenda that has been specified by Team A or Team B, and therefore we are going to vote for them. But how are we governing ourselves towards the process that defines itself as the moment of the giving of the consent by the governed? We have got to look at the youth and ask ourselves, are we preparing them to grant or deny their consent? Are we registering them as nationals of this country beyond their birth certificates? Are we giving them national identification cards? Are we giving them the Kenyan passport? Are we preparing to register them as voters? Are we registering them in the continuous voter registration processes? Is there balance of distribution in the voter registration exercise, or is it skewed? Do we have the activity going on more consciously and more intentionally in certain parts of the country, those that seem to favor the incumbent? Because that is governance. Governance, even preparing the citizens to express themselves towards engaging in a social contract with the people who are going to govern. If we are already suppressing numbers in some parts of the country, then the election is already being pre-rigged. It's already going to favor certain people. If we are opening up the borders, the national boundaries, so that some foreigners can flow into areas of the country that are believed to be amenable to voting for the incumbent, we say that now we are removing the restrictions in vetting of people from a certain region who want to become Kenyan nationals. Then we are already pre-rigging the election. If we are telling some people who have lived in the country for so many years as a community, but without being recognized as one of the Kenyan communities, that now you are Kenyans, you can now raise so that they vote for you, then the election is already being pre-rigged. And so the country is being governed pejoratively. It's being governed badly with regard to preparation for the elections. Unfortunately, the current government, more than any other government in the country's 62 years, has been focused on just that, elections, second term, from day one. They have never pretended to be working for the country, to be doing what they went there to do. You do not get elected so that when you get into the office, you begin seeking to be elected. Your work is not about elections, and you are focused the entire national psyche on one thing called elections. And because of elections, there's corruption in government. People are busy stealing to stockpile, to build war chests, that even the plan that you had, that you said we have got 5 pillars that we're going to be dealing with agriculture, with the healthcare, with the ICT, with, I don't know, SMEs and the Hustler Fund and bottom up. They have been forgotten. They've been replaced with something called empowerment, that now people gallivant across the country, dishing out money, treating voters of something called empowerment, but the objective is the election. Very unfortunate.
Talking of elections, yesterday in Musalia Mudavadi, during the Maragoli cultural event, he talked of Malava, saying that now that the people of Malava decided to elect a person or a candidate from the government side, then that means that Western region is not playground for the naysayers and the other side. What is your take on this?
They cannot come to Malava, rig an election the way they did, and then go around boasting and calling people noisemakers. The Malava election was rigged. What is rigging an election? When you have someone like Farouk Kibet coming to camp in Malava, from the day he hears that Injend Malulu has died, he arrives even before the man is buried, does not even have the common decency to wait for the person to go under the ground, to start dishing out money to people, persuading them to vote in a certain way. That is rigging an election. It is stealing an election. And they all camped there. We had members of parliament in that place. Entire Kakamega County members of parliament with sacks and sacks upon sacks of money, treating voters. What is there to be so proud of out of that kind of flawed process? Why not allow the people to decide out of free will? We had arsonists, people burning other people's cars. We had the police clobbering the opposition, disrupting meetings in Malava. We had break-ins in people's homes because they were of a certain political leaning. My good friend Musalia Mudavadi ought to be ashamed that that is the kind of thing that he would then flag and say that we won. That's not winning. That is rigging, that is stealing, that is intimidation. That is not liberal democracy. That is not the consent of the governed. Shame on them.
Do you think that the by-election will be a reflection of what will really transpire in 2027?
In the sense that Kenya Kwanza will want to bribe voters, yes, it is a reflection. In the sense that they will want to disrupt the meetings of the opposition, it's a reflection. In the sense that they will want to engage in violence, it is a reflection of what they're planning for 2027. In terms of mobilization of MPs, no, it is not a reflection of what will happen in 2027. This time they had idle capacity across the 12 constituencies in Kakamega County, and so they were able to mobilize them. They had that idle capacity at the coast. They had idle capacity in all the constituencies in the country, and so they could mobilize the system's MPs with money to go out. Even the money itself, they will not have the hundreds of millions that they have had to pour in Magarini and to pour in Malava and in other places, to pour in Kisa East here. Kisa East is the next ward.
Yeah, but the opposition took that one.
Yeah, but we are talking about the behavior and the money that was poured there.
So opposition won despite all the monies that were poured there.
Yeah, that's an indication that there's going to be defiance of that money. But you know, here in Kisa, we are very firm people when it comes to uprightness. We have a very upright people, and I believe that other Luya people can borrow a leaf from us.
And also from, is it Kabuchai?
Yes, and Kabuchai, you saw the same. But, and this Musalia Mudavadi knows, and President William Ruto knows, that they sat down, they discussed, and they agreed that by hook or crook, they were going to take Malava. They said, Kwamba, let us take it. Whatever it takes to take it, we can deal with the consequences through the courts, but it must be taken. So it was taken in that fashion. 2027 is going to be a different ballgame. Okay.
So last question on referendum. I think it just come on my mind now that you're saying that probably having a referendum on 2027, of course, the same time we'll be having the general election. Then this actually would be overwhelming also to the voters, because now you have to vote in more than the usual times. But also, what do you think? Should it come then earlier? Should it be held earlier, the referendum?
I don't think we need a referendum. We are just causing more confusion and more weight on an overwhelmed and tired electorate. We must midwife the process differently, because it's a proposed referendum on an already flawed thing. We need a national conversation on this to find out the best way to treat this mischief that has arisen out of, in my view, the doing of 3 individuals, one who is no longer with us, 2 who remain, but one who has retired, and a 3rd one who is in power today. How do we process ourselves through that? Because the Constitution never anticipated this kind of crisis. However, it is in our hands. And so a sober conversation between the executive and the political opposition and Kenyans at large is of the essence. But we cannot have a referendum that has been, that is addressing an agenda that has been cobbled up by a partisan team in the national executive seeking basically to expand the spaces that exist in the executive for its own political ends, pretending to be curing the question of electoral boundaries. Perhaps the judiciary comes in there. We need to seek judicial reference. And if the judiciary recognizes that a mistake has been made and gives orders that within a certain period of time after the elections in 2022, the boundaries should be reviewed, then I think that gives us a new lease. And I do hope that the cases presently before the judiciary could give that kind of direction. But a Ruto Mudavadi manipulated referendum for purposes of creating offices for meeting political ends is something that Kenyans should reject.
So actually, other than just positions, I've heard also people saying that probably this is also one way that they will want to extend their term. Why would you spend money on an election that probably will be nullified?
The election period is non-negotiable.
Okay.
The Ruto tenure is non-negotiable. It's going to end in August 2027. And Kenyans are not going to negotiate with Ruto on that. Vayo Auma, you have come here before and I have told you things that are going to happen, and each one of them has happened. Now I want you to listen carefully, and I want the country to listen carefully. That the Ruto term ends in August 2027 is non-negotiable. This country is not going to negotiate with William Ruto an extension of his term. Not at all. If he wants, he can come back in August 2027 to request Kenyans to consider him for an extension of mandate through a proper election for another 5-year period. But to add on even a single day, this country is not going to allow him. Perish the thought, because it will not work. And if they dare attempt that, then they are going to see the mother of all protests. And it will be a protest that might not even allow Ruto to have his name on the presidential ballot paper. So that thought should perish. If it's one of the things that they're thinking about, they must stop dead in their tracks and stop today. 2, a referendum that seeks to create extra offices for them is also dead on arrival. Kenyans are already overwhelmed and overburdened, and they're not going to accept that extension of office and of space.
Maybe, once actually was President William Ruto's, we can say, economic brain.
Mm-hmm.
Now is a critic, really. Is this ideological courage or probably just, political repositioning for him?
There are people who believe in the things that they say. And Ndindi Nyoro is not the only person who was supportive of William Ruto, who no longer agrees with him. I agreed with President William Ruto when he was deputy president on the campaign trail, because we had a vision. There was something we believed in, and we thought we had the right candidate who understood what we were talking about for this country. The bottom-up economic development agenda is something that has respected scholars throughout the historical debates of modes and models of development have positioned. And William Ruto bought into that agenda. It was never his, it was people like Ndindi Nyoro, people like myself, people like the renegade David Ndii, and others who fashioned it and who believed in it. But when he arrived, he became the tortoise. He became the tortoise that told the other birds, the birds at a party in the skies, that all this is mine. Hii ni yangu, and he forgot what the visit was about. And so Ndindi Nyoro, when you listen to him, he's still where he was, ideologically. Yes, there might be political dividends that go with that, naturally. But he's still speaking the same language that he was speaking in 2022, and which he spoke in 2023, 2024. He kept silent and looked at the happenings in the country, and he has taken a bold stand. And I think that is what a man who has a moral authority and moral conscience and leadership ethics does.
So where does this actually place a Kenyan, a fellow Kenyan? Because actually, we're talking about a ruling party MP publicly criticizing the same government, questioning about public debt, taxation, and all that on a national TV. Don't we have avenues? What does it even tell us when it comes to, government confidence?
When you are in a certain political party, you are not beholden to the sins that the leadership in that political party commits. You're not gagged. And even within the political party space, different shades of opinion, assuming that it is a common opinion, different shades of the same opinion must be allowed. But even total divergence of opinion is allowed. We have had a number of times in recent times in the United States of America, the Democrat members of Congress rescuing President Donald Trump's government from shutdown. And there are times when it has actually shut down for a number of days, only for the requisite numbers of Democrats to vote with the Republicans to give it a fresh lease of life. In certain single-party environments, divergence of opinion is allowed. Here in a party like ODM, we are seeing people pulling in different directions, and they should be allowed without being threatened, being told tutakufukuza, atuwe utatoka kwa chama. Hapana. So that is healthy.
So does that really strengthen governance in the party, or, it actually weakens
the pillars of institutions must be tested. Like we have seen the pillars of the Kenyan constitution being shaken and being tested by opportunistic politicians. The pillars of a political party should also be tested. You have parties that call themselves alliances or coalitions without referring to any specific one. You may find a party says a Patriotic Reform Party, or it might say something like People's Social Congress. Those ones have not claimed very, very, very obviously to be democratic. But when you have something calling itself Orange Democratic Party or Democratic National Alliance, those entities must be seen to be democratic, and they must allow people to ventilate without telling them that we are going to throw you out. Only those who want to exit will be allowed to exit. But to start telling people that, we are not going to allow you to say this because Baba said this, Baba said that. No, Baba was not God. There's only God who gives us what we call the gospel truths. And we don't question the gospels. If we have any personal doubts about any chapters and verses in the Gospels, we keep quiet about them because God has given us the gospel truth. But the rest of the human beings, the mortal beings, are subject to being questioned.
There's a time I interviewed you and you talked about coming up with the propaganda, and especially when you're heading to general elections, most of the politicians come up with propagandas to sell. And the fact that you also touched on you are close to President William Ruto when you're forming this government, there is this issue of dynasty versus hustlers. And then now later on, of course, it sailed through. Right now, we are hearing of third world to first world country. According to you, do you think this is also another propaganda to solve so that they sail through the coming election? Probably from your political science lens, I really want to know, what does this actually require us as a country moving from third world to first world?
First, propaganda from communications and in particular political communications perspective, there is nothing wrong with propaganda. Propaganda is supposed to be organized information that is propagated, that is passed on to people who want for purposes of promoting a certain cause. So traditionally, we speak of political party propaganda. Ile info yenu vile mmeipanga ya kushawishi watu wawapigie kura. But there is also something that, for want of better terminology, because of its racist undertones, has been called dark propaganda, where you go around maybe besmirching people or spreading some terrible rumors. You may say this one is a cannibal, he's eating people, and so on and so forth. Dark propaganda. So propaganda itself as a platform for campaign, there's nothing really wrong about it. The things we call manifestos are products and platforms at once of propaganda. They propagate the information. But this thing about a first world, moving from the third world to the first world, first, the concept from a purely political science perspective has been completely gotten wrong, because those who came up with it in the 50s, including my good friend Walter Lippmann and other scholars in politics and communications, were basically talking about ideological orientation. That at that time there was conflict of an ideological nature, political economy conflict, that on the one hand you had the capitalist mode of development and the political systems that it propagated, and on the other hand you had the communist socialist world, and those two worlds were defined as one world, the first world, the second world. But somewhere in between, you had the global south that was defined as belonging to neither of the two camps. Indeed, there was, within that period of the Cold War, an entity that called itself the non-aligned movement. It was not aligned to either the right or the left, the east or the west. And the membership comprised mostly of the global south, the poor countries of the world in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. And so those who said first world, second world, defined these countries in this corridor as the third world that was separate from the first, the Western world, and the second, the Eastern communist world. However, in the fullness of time, because these countries in this corridor were poor, the third world started being defined as a poor world. Watu maskini wako kwa third world. And with the collapse, especially of the Warsaw Pact, yeah, we could talk about NATO and the Warsaw Pact and all that. But with the collapse of the Warsaw Pact in the early 1990s, we found ourselves in a space in which now the poor countries of the world start aspiring to become rich, to raise the standards of living, to become like those ones of Europe and America and so on and so forth. Now this is a good, noble dream that we would want. We want to live well. I certainly would like to live within those first world standards. But the first world is not just about roads. It's not just about hospitals, schools, infrastructure. The first world is about a way of living, a way of doing things. The things which we do here that are culturally shocking to visitors in this country, on this continent. You find a continent where you have cattle, goats, mkokoteni, sheep, motorcyclists, matatus, tuk-tukus, all occupying space on the road at Luanda market here, at Manyudia market here, at Kusava here. Yeah? And you have the motorbikes that do not respect the traffic code, and if they hit you, they all come and gang up on you and they want to eat you alive. Never mind that they are in the wrong space and that the man on the bike was actually wrong. That there are people riding on bikes without helmets, that you have got burst sewers in the streets. Look, it's effortless to make the kinds of changes that are required. The first world is a way of thinking that we are thinking about stealing exams. That a man who steals money and comes to this village and distributes it around to people gets elected. They don't do that in the first world that Ruto is talking about. How can Ruto send Farouk to Malawa with bags and lorries of money to treat voters so that they elect David Ndakwa, and Mudavadi brags about it in Vihiga, and you say that you want to take us to the first world? Where does it happen like that in the first world? That you will come and clobber people in Kabuchai because they are supporting a certain independent candidate against Moses Wetangula's for the Kenya candidate, and you go scot-free with that. Where in the first world do such things happen? Where in the first world do you go to church with bags of money to bribe the church minister, and the church minister is greeting you with a supported hand? Those are the basic fundamentals that we must deal with before the first world can begin happening. that we've got to go to the schools and teach and reteach ourselves. So this is hopeless propaganda. Having explained the meaning of propaganda, it is hopeless propaganda that is going nowhere.
So is Kenya's problem lack of ideas, a lack of discipline, or lack of political will?
The ideas we have, if you are listening to me carefully here, you can see that we have ideas, and I'm Kenyan, and I've listened to you, and I've seen that you have ideas, and you are Kenyan, and we listen to other people. The Kenyans who have ideas either do not want to go into the political space to become leaders, or the political space cannot stomach them. If you come here, Kakamega here, for example, county that has been badly run, it's being badly run, and you say you want to become governor, and you tell the people of Kakamega how you are going to transform their lives. Look at this Kakamega here. Look at those of avocados there, which are growing on their own. Nobody planted them. Look at these locusts, which are just growing on their own. And when they have produced fruit, think of doing an orchard, making this entire Kakamega, Bungoma, Busia, all the way to Mount Elgon, all the way to Siaya, all the way to Bomet. You can make a big orchard here and have wineries like you have never seen in Africa, distilleries like the ones you find in Alsace and Lorraine in France, the ones in Spain, in the Pyrenees, the ones in Italy and in South Africa, and keep people here busy producing wealth and money for themselves. If you go out there to start talking to people about such ideas, they will say, hey, hear what this one now is also telling us. So the ideas are there, and the people with the ideas don't go out to seek to be elected. And those who get elected don't want to work with the people who have got ideas. So the bottom line is that the problem is political.
You have ideas. Why are you not seeking an elective seat?
I don't have the time and money to go and wrestle with people out there. I package my ideas in the political party and ventilate at that theoretical level. Those who can buy those ideas can buy them and seek election. But I don't have the capacity and the willpower to burden myself with a recalcitrant electorate.
Which one decision today could fundamentally change Kenya's development trajectory?
One decision would be Ruto to step down from office, because he has taken the country completely the wrong way. It is the way of thinking that government is about self-enrichment through primitive accumulation of wealth. And it is primitive accumulation within the social science context, that you are accumulating all these things that you should be using to develop the country. So the one decision is, if we just wake up one day and we hear that President William Ruto has stepped down from power and he has decided that he's not going to occupy political space anymore, and that he himself and all the people in his government are going to do a Zakayo thing. And remember, Zakayo climbs down from the tree. And
there's Zakayo Shuka.
Yeah, and he says, I'm going to refund tenfold. That would change Kenya. He should do a Zakayo.
Okay. If you're grading President William Ruto today, economy, cost of living, jobs, governance, name it all. What score will you give him and why?
None.
None?
I give him nothing.
Like 0%.
And I'll explain. William Ruto set an exam for himself. That exam, he also prepared the marking scheme himself. He came here to Kakamega, for example, and signed a contract, a charter with the people of Kakamega. He did it. He signed a charter with the people of Busia, with the people of Bungoma, with the people of Kilifi, with the people of Kwale. And so the marking scheme are those charters that he signed with us. Has he delivered? Where are the 3 vegetable factories that he promised in Kakamega? Where is the revival of Mumias, of pan paper mills, of Nzoia, of the tea factory in Maragoli that he talked about? A marking scheme. So if I'm marking, I will put X, X, X. Where are the 1,000 kilometers of bitumen that he promised? If I cannot see that, if I cannot see the Mudete tea factory and all these things that he said, it's obviously wrong, wrong, wrong. And at the end of it all, it is 0. But beyond that, he even left the template that he gave us, that this was the bottom-up economic agenda, and transferred himself to something else called empowerment. It's not part of the exam that we set and the marking scheme that he provided. So if as a teacher, I ask you to discuss the dominant paradigm as articulated by Everett Rogers in political and economic development communications, and instead you decide that you are going to write an essay on Anna Karenina and the characterization of the actors in Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, you may write a very beautiful essay, but it's not what the examiner has asked you. Mm-hmm. So I'll just cross through it and write there 0. That is where William Ruto is. So you can't cause me to give him marks. Yes.
No. I'm not like literally forcing it to
even
give
for
you marks.
effort. Even for effort, there's nothing.
Really? Even for handwriting?
No. Handwriting could be writing hieroglyphics. Yeah? And they can't read hieroglyphics.
Let me ask another question. What has President William Ruto done right that critics are actually deliberately ignoring?
I cannot, in all honesty, think of anything that William Ruto has done right. Nothing. The closest you could come to suggesting that he did something was an attempt to promote sports. But even that is flawed. We are building stadia. There's hemorrhage of funds ending up in the wrong hands. We supported Harambee Stars the wrong way, because I must look at that supporting of Harambee Stars with those millions of shillings against the doctors who are on strike at that same time, against the lecturer strikes, and look at his priorities and balancing act. Mm-hmm. I cannot look at anything in isolation.
He has done affordable housing, there is SHA program, there is Kazi Maju program.
Now you are starting to speak like him, eh?
Those are some of the programs.
No, you're speaking at him at a pace that does not want to allow people to
No, please.
to think and explain. When you look at affordable housing, whose houses are these? On whose land are these houses being constructed? What is he doing to the people who are living in those spaces before moving out? Whose money is he using to do that so-called affordable housing? Whose payslip is he raiding? What is the payback for the owner of that payslip? Who is the supplier of the materials that are being used for those affordable housing? Who is the contractor? What are the terms? Who is paying that contractor? How much are they being paid to do this affordable housing? He says he has created employment. Yeah, you can create employment. I can instruct people and pay them to go and beat up fellows. I can, people have employed goons. They have created employment. So you must ask yourself what the ultimate value in these things is. You cannot just look at something in isolation and say, amefanya hivi, ati amecreate hii. SHA or SHIF, Social Insurance, Social Health Insurance Fund, SHIF, it has actually killed a lot of people. People who have gone to hospital, they are not able to get treatment because he disrupted a system that was working. I have nothing against President William Ruto, but I will not join in the lies that he has done well. He hasn't.
Do you think that this government is actually listening to Wananchi's pain or explaining it away?
It is a very deaf government that refuses to listen to anybody except the decibels of the national leader who speaks at a bombastic pace in one register that is permanently in the campaign mode. It doesn't listen at all. Doesn't listen to doctors, to teachers, to communications professionals, to anybody except to itself. And to itself meaning one individual.
Barrack Muluka, if Kenya stays on its current path, what kind of country will be there by 2030?
A failed state.
And what should worry Kenyans the most right now?
Failure.
Failure.
That we are becoming a failed state. A failed state is what happens when the government loses control of security, when the economy collapses, when we host militias like the Sudanese Rapid Response Forces, like when we use goons to try and manage protesters, when bribery and corruption becomes the order of the day, when the education system is in disarray. You're going to train teachers for 1 week and say, now we have prepared you for teaching year 10 onwards, high school teachers, when there's no harmony between the syllabuses in high school and the universities. We have no idea at the university what the entry requirements are going to be for the people who are going to be leaving senior secondary. When the healthcare system is in disarray, when the national leadership, the people in the executive, send their children to the Cambridge system and not the CBC system, when those same people who are in charge of our hospitals cannot be treated in our hospitals, they go abroad to be treated or to die there, then we are moving towards a failed state. And we are not very far from there. That is what should worry Kenyans most.
Ongea na Wakenya, and especially right now when there is a whole lot of confusion. People say there's a lot of noise other than development in this country.
I have only two quick messages. One is for the political opposition. You are also a letdown. You're making a lot of noise that cannot give Kenyans a message of hope. In the miasma in which Kenya Kwanza has left the Kenyan citizens, there is need for an opposition that frames a message that Kenyans can believe in. There's need for an opposition that gives the country rays of hope. So far, you are focused on internal competition and attrition that does not seem to promise the country anything, apart from everyone saying, I'm the best, that I'm the most suitable, that I'm the one with the tribal numbers. We are not interested in that as Kenyans. Kenyans want to hear a message of hope from the political opposition. For the government, you have had more than enough time with your adventures and accumulation of wealth across the country. Give Kenyans a break. Propel the ship of state to a safe harbor in 2027 by doing the right things according to the law. And when you get there, please disembark. Thank you.
So that is Barrack Muluka, having one-on-one with us today. And we hope that one of these finders will be able also to host him and share more about basically what is happening in the country. Till next time, kwaheri kwa sasa.